Stacey. Professor Springley's talked about diversity and all of our organisations needing to respond to our growing populations in Auckland, and I believe WaterSafe Auckland does work with a number of you in the room to try and do that. Today what I'm going to present is just one example of what we're trying to do to address the needs of drowning amongst our Maori, Pacific and Asian youth. And Wai Wise, I know some of you have heard me speak about this project before, is a partnership project with Safe Waipareira, Surf Life Saving, Sport Waipareira, and it was funded, the pilot project was funded by Sport New Zealand. So I'll give you a very, very brief background. I'm not going to be able to have time to go through everything I've prepared today, because I do have a couple of participants of the program who I think will be able to illustrate more about what they got out of it than me telling you. So just a little bit about the stats. We all know them, the age groups, the ethnic groups, and what we're trying to do to address that. What this project actually did is, it's based out west, so it was based in West Auckland. That's where the funding was targeted. That's where a couple of the organisations that we worked with were from. And basically what it came out of is that we found that the 16 to 20 years and the 21 to 13-year-old age group was the age group getting into trouble on our beaches. So this is data from Surf Life Saving New Zealand, and these are the two ages that are coming up a lot on our beaches: Piha, Muriwai, Bethels, Karikari, and other beaches around the region as well. So very quickly, so it was to give youth of Maori, Pacific and Asian the practical knowledge and skills to be safer when in, on and around the aquatic environment, to increase participation in aquatic sport and recreation, and Professor Brennan has already touched on that a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well, and to develop role models. So you'll hear from a couple of our role models a little bit later. So very quickly, what the program content was, it ran over a 6 to 8 week period most of the time. Full sessions, theory sessions, an introduction to aquatic activity, open water beach experience with the lifeguards, with Surf Life Saving, and we had leadership development and personal skills the whole way through the program. So the evaluation was done the whole way through, so we could actually start to measure what the students were learning the whole way through. So we did pre and post surveys, we did interviews and focus groups at the end of every single group. So as I said earlier, we ran the project for 3 years. We had 4 groups each year, which actually was over the initial KPI that we set. And we've just done a full evaluation of the project. So staff interviews were done, participant focus groups, and online survey as well. So we've got both quantitative and qualitative measures. Okay, as I said, 4 programs each year. The whole program, we had 220 people completed it. In terms of the quantitative outcomes, 92% reported an increase of personal water safety skills. 90% could describe and demonstrate how to help someone in the water. 100% indicated they are more likely to swim at patrol beaches. So when we look at the stats that I showed earlier on, this is actually really pleasing for us. So 100% indicated they'd now go to the local pools, and of course it was around the water confidence. Many of the students that went through this program had never really been in the water before. They'd never had the experience. As I said, a lot of the groups we worked with were in West Auckland. Some of them had never been to the West Coast beaches before. So never been to Piha or Muriwai or Bethels, even though they lived within half an hour. So again, it's about that exposure to Surf Life Saving, what the lifeguards actually do. You talked about the youth going to the beaches and getting into trouble. So it's about making those links as well. So we did do other things, and I talked about the personal skills and development the whole way through. So we did 2 separate leadership courses ran by Sport New Zealand through Sport Waipareira. We did first aid courses. They did an instructor swimming course, which actually has been embedded in the organisation that we've been working with. And we had alcohol and drug education component added to that as well, which we got extra funding for. So I'll very quickly go over some of the stuff because these guys can again illustrate this, but some of the comments that were very key was something about wearing life jackets. Obviously with the bylaw being discussed quite a lot at the moment, it's timely, but there was one example where we did the Wai Wise program with a group of students. They went on a camp immediately afterwards, and the tutor reported back that none of the students, and we're talking about older kids, so that 16 to 25 age group, would not go on the boat without life jackets. So I think that's a very clear example of that learning. With the tutors, they said it was good to get in the water with the students, and they learned a lot as well. So it was about that role modelling from the tutors and from the staff involved, which increased participation as well. So students' comments, walking away confidently knowing I've taken a lot of information for my church and my family. I think that's quite key as well, because one of the aims was not just giving them that knowledge, but it was so they could carry it on for their communities. So we also had a lot of unintended outcomes, and I actually find this stuff the most interesting. So it provided a job and career pathway. So a lot of the students we started working with realised that, we actually were interested in the police or the services, but we know there's a swimming test. And previously, the tutors told us that they didn't want to, their students were interested in going into the police, but they stopped altogether with the recruitment process because they didn't know how to swim, or they weren't confident in the water. So we incorporated that into the program about, increasing their treading water and their swimming and all that type of thing. The police test is 50 metres, I believe, so for a lot of us, that's easy. We don't think about that, it's 2 lengths of a pool. But for these students who had never really had any formal swimming or been in the water before, it was a huge challenge. So improved physical fitness and health, increased self-esteem, participants gained recognition and certificates. And again, this was a big one because even some of the adults who participated, they'd never actually had certificates before. So with all the groups, we did provide certificates about what they covered, but also things like the first aid course and things like that. So they were all the added things as well. The most important one, I think, links with what Professor Brunner has been talking about, is it was about gaining access and forming relationships to organisations that they'd never been exposed to before. So things like the lifeguards, like Coast Guard. We went to visit a Coast Guard unit out in Tinderangi, where some of the groups didn't even know what Coast Guard was. I actually was speaking to someone again yesterday who said, we don't know what Coast Guard is. So it was about engaging those groups. So now they actually know what they do. They're more likely to engage with them. And we do know that we talked about sports clubs. One of the things I really enjoyed doing was Wakaama. And we did actually almost all our groups in Wakaama. However, we found with a couple of clubs that we engaged with, it was around their membership processes and their pathway that the clubs weren't willing to negotiate. This is how we do things, this is our membership processes, these are our trial processes, and of course there's also fees associated with that as well. So even though they were happy to provide have-a-go days, they weren't really willing to welcome them into the club or change what they were doing to get these kids, or these students, these young people actually into their clubs. So that's something that we are working on at the moment. So very quickly, the recommendations that came out of the full evaluation, and it was an external evaluation. It's transferable, a facilitator is needed. We're looking at options for a trainer-trainer model for long-term sustainability, and we've actually been working on that the whole way through. So training institutes where Maori, Pacific and Asian students attend, we've found as a good fit. We've worked with a couple of them the whole way through, the Village Sports Academy in particular. Longer term funding needs to be secured for sustainability, so we were very lucky to get the full 3-year funding from Sport New Zealand. And we have a little bit for this summer, but in terms of carrying on these outcomes and these types of interventions, longer term funding is needed, and having clear guidelines and expectations. So conclusion before I hand on to my co-presenters. So it's a very beneficial and useful program for all involved. I think the main thing is around the practical learning. A lot of the students and organisations we worked with, their students were not the type to sit in a classroom. So it was about getting out there, learning on the job, learning practically, and actually being in the environment, so being in the pools, being at the beach, actually knowing what the waves do and experiencing the currents and things like that. Had wider reach than just the intended audience. So as I said earlier, our target audience was the 16 to 25 population, but there was a lot of support throughout with whānau members and facilitators and tutors that they've gone on and shared that knowledge as well. So we've talked about funding. So it's a beneficial addition to the water safety and sport and recreation community, and it provides a solid base for expansion across Auckland. So 3 years, 228 students and 4 programs each year, which leads us on to, we've just started the first program out in South Auckland. Next year we are providing a program for the North Shore Police Youth Aid and retaining the West Link out here with Houston girls and boys. So in terms of sustainability, we've developed a facilitator's guide that will be used with the groups that we've already worked with in terms of creating sustainability and keeping that water safety culture within their organisations. So again, very, very quick, but I'm really I think the highlight is going to be actually hearing from some of the students and participants themselves.
Ko rāwiri ki rata tako ingoa, ko nā pui te iwi. It's a great honour and privilege to be here. I come from the capital of New Zealand, Kaikoui, those that don't understand, and then migrated to a rural town called Green Bay out here in West Auckland. It was a great honour and privilege to be able to go through such a program, not only for myself as a tutor, but for the people that I work with, the students. The students I work with were an alternative education unit. They're ranging from 13 to 16 years of age. Predominantly Maori, but we have other ethnic groups within our organisation or inside the teaching reading that we do. So it was very, very interesting to see our young ones wanting to put their hands up today. I actually got a bit of a life jacket. I didn't want to come here at all. I was a bit nervous, but they turned around and threw me a lifeline and said, "Mata, we'll come with you and help you if you like." Which gave me an understanding that A, they love what they did. B, they understand the importance of being here today. Help people understand what we went through and the importance that it's going to save more lives out there. I mean, the stats are up on the board, the figures are all there, and yet the cost is way too high. Way too high for any family or anybody to be able to put out a cost for any sort of funeral. I actually personally want to thank, now that I've been through the program, all the different people and services, whether it's minor or major, that play a part in these types of services to help people. It's very unique, you know. I've got a different role. I mean, it's easy for me to just stand up and teach people. But to have specialised skills that helps people around the water, how people love water. Simple. But the first thing we actually taught is we young kids is how to do a bomb. How to find a nice rock, deep pool, jump. Some of my experiences when I was younger, I had my grandmother, for example. Our people love tuna. If you don't understand tuna, it's eels. So I had grandmother in the water like this, pull up the eel and throw it on the bank. And we were like, "Check." Next thing we were behind the grandparent, we're in the water. No one taught us to swim. But we're right behind the grandparent, watching them how they're doing it, thinking it's fun until someone goes, "Here, get you out of there." Same with the ocean. We see the big waves and we think, "Oh, check, we can challenge this thing." We get out there, next thing, we've got our grandparents and they're pulling us back out of the water. Dangerous. So that's how we actually learned when it was my days. Coast Guard, lifesavers, we'd see the buildings, we'd either use them at night time, of course, when we're finishing, or we'd put our writing on them. But actually go through the doors. I'm 46 years of age, I've never stepped foot into a Coast Guard or lifesaving until this program. So 46 years of my life I've been in this country, not once. Now I can turn around and stand here today with a lot of pride and say, "Well, what an amazing place, what amazing things people do." But that was again brought down to a lack of knowledge and understanding. We didn't believe we needed these sort of services around. Our parents taught us. So we didn't need it. The other point to it for us, we always thought things were about this, money. And of course, to a lot of our people, it's too much. $2 on a breed or to go to a Coast Guard. No, we'd rather keep the $2. Point being is we started to understand that that's not the right way to go about things. So we were very, very grateful and honored, like we're saying, to be able to give them this chance to come up here and share some of the experiences. Now, I'm very, like I said, very honoured to bring 2 students along with me who put their hand up, threw me a lifeline. They're like fish out of the water too, you know. But like I told them, don't like to panic. There'll be lifeguards here, so someone will rescue us. At the same token, like I said to them, you look for the most prettiest prettiest lifeguard here, and you ask them to help. So the gentleman at the back will do me. Anyway, I'm going to hand them over for the students to start with for now, and then I'll finish up later.
Kia ora, my name is Anderson Thompson and I'm 15 years of age. I'm Ngati Paua and Ngati Whātua descent. My marae and iwi is based out in Maraitai and we regularly use the nearby beaches for leisurely use. I've been attending Amokura since July last year. I'd like to share my experience of the Wai Wise water safety program. Before the program, I was unable to swim. And I got promoted to my little sister's paddleboard. But I was not a confident swimmer and always taught to respect the water. After the program, I gained more experience and confidence over the water. I'm confident in saving someone from drowning. I enjoyed learning to swim, the different activities, learning about lifeguards, getting out of class, and love the waka. The one thing I learned most was to give it your all and to be focused. I would like to take this opportunity and thank Stacey for the skills that she has taught us and being an awesome role model. And my point of view on the water is don't disrespect the water, don't drink alcohol and go for a swim, to wear proper clothing and not wear your new Levi's jeans, and take the water seriously and stay between the flags. Too much of our people are disobeying the rules. And thank you for listening to my speech.
Kia ora. I was meant to be going before, but I'm too shy. Kia ora, my name is Nikita Thompson. I'm 14 years old. I am of Ngāpu and Tūpoi descent, and I attend Amokura Alternative Education School. It's based out in West Auckland. I've been attending Amokura for the past 2 years. I'm here to tell you, or let you know, what I learned through taking part in the water safety program. Before the program, I was unable to swim. I didn't like swimming, and I was scared of the water. I didn't know what a life jacket was for, and I had never, ever put one on before. When I first put it on, it felt warm, but there were so many clips attached to it, as there are more clips that I put in my hair. I now know that it is so important for everyone that goes out on a boat to have a life jacket on. The video reinforced my knowledge of why we need to wear them on boats. Our cultures live off tangaroa, and there have been many drownings supplied by not fastening all the clips and doing up the zips. I enjoyed the activity where 2 other students and I were in a dinghy. I learned how to breathe underneath the dinghy. That was hard work, flipping the boat over and trying to get myself back in. I had to help 2 of my male friends get back into the boat. So much for helping and damsel in distress. I was a knight in shining armour. Looking back, I have gained so much more knowledge about the water, how we need to learn to respect tangaroa, what correct swimming gear is needed, the lifeguards, and how they are all volunteers like Stacey. I still need more confidence, especially jumping off the diving boards. That was scary, and I was not ready to take that mission. But hopefully my confidence will grow in time. I would like to thank you Whānau for listening to what I have to share, and also mostly thanks to you Stacey and your team for encouraging me to give everything a go and to try to overcome my fear. Morena tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
So you can see how proud and honoured I am to have the 2 students come up here and speak from the heart. And again, we heard the same sort of things that you're hearing from Stacey and her teams about our culture and how we are. That's just the way we've been brought up. Now we're trying to change all that. And again, you know, I bought this freely thing in, and usually it carries my kino, all my muscles with me. I didn't realise if you flip it up side down and hold on to it, you can help you. Huh? Whoever knew that? Now, $2 bucket, hello. A lot of us will take these to the beaches once we start telling others. What about in the drinks? Didn't know these things could help. You know, these things were never brought up in our lives. All we use, open it up and drink. So these things, like I said, have been big things that we've been able to take to our whānaus. Again, 3 of us here, a little copette at the back there with the camera sione. You double that, triple it. Because we've finally been able to give the information that's been handed to us over to others. Now, how valuable is that? You got to place $1 on it, $2.50 for this, versus 12,000 something for a funeral. You know, it doesn't even equal up to our kina, it doesn't equal up to the powers, it doesn't equal up to the muscles or the snapper we take home. You put that across the farmers like what we do, you can understand why a lot of more people will sit up and listen. Because that's the last thing you ever want to do is go home and be able to tell that. I too have learned a lot of things. Like I said, I went to the Coast Guard, and like I've said to most people, I've learned a couple of things. KFC does not stand for kai for cousins. And what does MAF stand for? Māoris after fish. I now understand what they truly mean, you know. But again, it's sharing that knowledge and expertise. But again, it's also, I take my hat off to all those people that fund, support financially the people that are trying to deliver these sorts of things. That's why we come here. That's why we come out of our time, out of our teaching rooms, and believe what's happening here needs to be said. Because it's the last thing I want to do is go home to any of my whānau, and I didn't share that information with them, and the next thing I'm off to the marae and saying, look, if only I had told you. You know, but again, it starts with us, it starts with our younger generations. The younger generations that I know, like you hear Nikita and Anderson, they've gone home and told their families the same things. And how do you place a value on those? Your stats will come down, providing this information gets out. Your stats will come down if the voluntary organisations like Coast Guard and Self Life Saving open their doors. And sort of tell people, yeah, come on in. Because a lot of us Māori stand at the door like they're saying. I heard the professor saying it before. A lot of our cultures stand on the outside of us, looking, wondering what's going on the inside. We're not brave enough yet to just go, hey, do you mind showing us? And yet, we're finally teaching our students the same thing. If you want that information, knock and ask. Where before we were never taught that. We were taught from generation to generation. I hear what my grandfather says, I hear what my aunties and uncles say, I hear what everyone else says, but the people that actually be experts in their professions. Yeah. Now, we're able to say, we'll go and talk to Stacey, for example. We'll talk to someone in Stacey's team. Another prime example of that, I have a 15-year-old son who's currently in school, high school. One of the things he wants to do in his future, he's already indicated to me, is work on the ocean. He's already 15 years of age, got his dive ticket, and the next stage he wants to do is go to the voluntary Coast Guard up in French Bay. I take my hat off to him. I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's a scary word out there, but I think for a lot of young ones, that's what they love about it the most, is the fear. Like, for example, you finding a lot of youth in that, they'll find the highest rock to jump into the most shallowest of water. Do we check first? No. We'll check one round underneath what's down there, but we'll jump first. Now what we're saying is no, check first before you jump. Those sort of messages need to get out there more and more. How do you break through to a lot of us Māoris and Pacific Island people? Oh, like I said, we have relationships with our own cultures, we have relationships with other cultures, and it's just about the word of mouth. It's the most valuable tool we have. You can have all the pictures in the world, and again, you would have heard even with Nikita's or even Anderson's speech, we live better out there than to put a pen in front of us. We're afraid of the pen, but we're not afraid of getting in the water. So if you can use that for cultures, you're going to go a long way. Throw us in the water, we'll love it. Put a pen in front of us, oh, we're bored. We don't want that. You know what I mean? Because we've always been taught, like I've said, from generation to generation, follow us into the water. Not follow us with the pen first, sit down, I'll tell you how it's done. It's not how we do it. Not on the marae. Not when I come from my grandparents and aunties and uncles. It was experience. The experience was, here is an eel, take it to the bank. Here is a snapper, and now what do I do with it? You know, that's how we got our experiences. Now, there are a lot of people that are up north, where I come from, like I said, from Kaikoui and stuff like that, that I'm able to proudly go back to them and say, hey, we're doing this wrong. Why are we doing it wrong? Well, I represented New Zealand in Touch 2003. So ask me if I'm fit, I'll leave it up to you to decide. I still play sport. I love it. Yeah, when challenged in the pool, oh heck, got to the third length. I need to go to the toilet, boy. Huffing and puffing. The next thing I'm going, where's my inhaler? Even though I don't take an inhaler. It just felt that way, you know? So I started to realise, no matter how fit I was, it wasn't about that. So we were introduced to a swimmer, someone that knew what they were doing, showed us techniques, how to swim correctly. Oh, now I can hold my breath a bit longer. Part of that, like I said. And yet I would have stood in front of you to say, no, I'm fit. I'll run these all around the rings. A touch tournament, for example, is 4 days, 8 hours a day. World Cup was 9 days, 8 hours in a day. And my body could handle that, but I couldn't handle 3 lengths of a pool. How does that work out? And that's what went into my mind. How did that work out, that I couldn't swim 3 lengths and not want to hang on to the side? And it was again to do with the techniques, the experience and skills I did not have, where I thought I did. Again, I was no more different than Anderson. I must have been most of my swimming in the bathtub, rather than learning it in a pool. Again, why didn't I go to the pool? Cost. Now that they've started to introduce this community where their pools are free for us to go to, hey, now you're getting more and more of our cultures going into there because it doesn't cost. We'd rather go into the ocean where it costs us nothing. But do we have the experience and knowledge? No, we don't. We've got little bits. And like they say, a little bit of knowledge is actually dangerous. The more experience, the more knowledge you're able to get out to the communities, the people that are out there, the more people you're going to save. So again, on my behalf, I thank you for the opportunity to come here and to share what we've been through over the last program with Stacey and her team. And it's a great honour to be able to stand here and say, look, what you're doing, all of you, no matter whether big or small, funding or no funding, and just even to train us, it's important. Very, very important. So, on behalf of us all, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.